Thank you. Good afternoon, members, and welcome to this meeting of review of Standing Orders Subcommittee. Meeting is being live streamed and recorded and will be made available for viewing through our Council's website. I'm not going to go through the entire good practice guidance because I think you're all more than familiar with it, so we'll move on to item 1 on the agenda, Sediment apologies and Chair's approval of remote participation. Claire, can you provide the Sediment and any apologies, please?
Thank you, Chair. We've currently got 7 members present today. With apologies from Councillor Malcolm Johnston. We've got Councillor Ian Crothers here as a substitute in his place. We've got yourself and Councillor Ian Crothers present in the Council Hall. Everybody else present on Teams. Thank you.
Many thanks, Claire. And I approve of members' remote participation. So moving on to item 2, declarations of interest. No. Good, so we'll move on to item 3, which is the minute of the previous meeting of 10th of September 2024. Are we all happy to agree the minute as read? Yep. Good.
Yep.
Super. Moving on to item 4, review of standing orders and the schemes, capital projects, report by Assistant Director, Transport and Infrastructure. This report has been removed from the agenda today. Are we happy to note it's been withdrawn? Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, I'm happy just to note that it's been withdrawn. However, being a public document, although the members got an email back in, I think it was the 7th of November, so we were aware it was withdrawn, but I'm just wondering on the Council's website, you know, should that had been updated to say that it had been withdrawn, because any public member would have seen that and thought, well, we're still waiting for the copy to follow. Just a point of clarification. Thanks, Chair.
Fair point, Councillor Campbell. Vlad.
Thank you, Chair. It's a good point from Councillor Campbell. I think in terms of the minute will certainly reflect that, but I take your point in terms of advance notice, and I'll speak to the team to see whether for future ones, such as any future withdrawals, we can maybe put something, a comment for the community and those accessing the website to be clear in terms of any withdrawal of papers. So if you'll take that on board.
Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, John. So no other members on that. Moving on to item 5, review of area committees, report by Head of Thriving Communities. Afternoon, Liz.
Good afternoon,
I'll hand over
all.
to you.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, members. I hope this is a fairly self-explanatory report. It simply brings you up to date with where we are. You will know from your area committees that we're currently coming round to speak to you to get any further thoughts on last year's comments and views from the members' workshop and the survey. And so what the report here for you today is for you to agree the timetable, which sees the outcome of these consultations and analysis and feedback coming to you in February, and then all going smoothly in that sense, we'll bring a report to full council on your behalf in March. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Liz. I'll open up the meeting to members' debate. Any questions from members? Councillor Crothers.
Probably more of a comment. The only thing is, see at paragraph 4.5, it was in regards to the questions in Appendix 2, the very last one. Just some of them picked up, but we'll pick up on this in the area committee obviously as well, as you've already outlined it. We get that in about a week and a half, couple of weeks' time in Andy Alnestiel. But in regards to, it's talking about do area committees wish to have the remit to endorse local place plans. I felt probably that, along with probably most planning, whether it's a master plan, a local place plan, or whether it's that higher level strategic document. I think we used to do that. I just thought it was a good idea to include something else that did come up, just for your information, Liz. Speaking to Chair of Wigtonshire Area Committee yesterday, we were just having a discussion around about area committees, and they've from my understanding, they've also set up the George Hotel is obviously the major project going on at this moment in time in Stranraer, and I think the 4 elected members there have set up almost like a small project. It's not a management board by any means, but made up of the 4 elected members, but a small panel, so they can have oversight on a monthly, bi-monthly or quarterly basis, so they get a chance to get, not operational, but certainly saying, it reminded me of the DG1 committee when we had that on a similar basis. I just thought 2 points, that's only 2 points I really want to bring up. We've got quite a number of other points I'll bring up at area committee, not here. Look forward to having that discussion, but I do think Andy Estile's moved strongly in the direction of this report over the last 15 months or so. I do. So no, but thanks very much for the report, Chair. Thanks for the and yourself, Liz, and look forward to getting involved at area committee shortly. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Ian. Yeah, I think this work's very valuable and will hopefully put us in the right direction. Councillor Campbell.
Thanks again, Chair. Yeah, happy with the recommendations. Just probably a few points of clarity or for clarification. 2.2, agree the timetable, yeah. As referenced in 4.6, although this is my own personal preference, I would have liked to see that as a table effect, because the next report has, you know, a timetable as a table. It makes better reading for the likes of myself. So that's just a passing comment at the moment. The clarity was really around the second part of 2.2, which is for the development and the agreement of any changes to the current arrangements, which is fine, but it'll not be the Standing Orders Subcommittee that will make that agreement, because we can only make recommendations. So just on that 1 point, Nestdale had this report yesterday, and one of the questions, I think it was question 3, it kind of reads as an either or, and it was raised, or could it be both? So, I mean, all this will be collated, I know, for the February meeting for Rosso, so we can try and bottom those out. But the things that was in the report yesterday, there was extra information in there. For example, just before question 4, there was a paragraph about community engagement. I'm just wondering, should that have been in this report? Maybe not, but I mean, it was just things like that, because on one of the extra information, particularly around common good subcommittees, and I think that makes reference in the appendix, although the workshop was over a year ago, on the appendix on page 16, it kind of worries me when I see things like agreeable in principle to the concept of pure subcommittees. Now, again, it should be full council that should make those any kind of agreement. I mean, any workshop or seminars that we have, we can't agree. It's not a body for making agreements. So it kind of worries me when I see that. But one of the points that was picked up in this deal was on page 18. It clearly says here, would you like on question 6, would you like to amalgamate the common good fund subcommittees or have area committees make decisions? Well, there was a clear preference that we continue with the current practice. So it's these kind of things. I know these will probably be bottomed out once all the area committees have their feedback, and that will actually come back in February. But it's just to get a wee bit of clarity on those points. Thanks, Chair. Sorry it was long-winded.
No, not at all. Not at all long-winded. Lots of questions. Liz?
Great. Yes, absolutely happy to answer each of your points. And of course, we'll take into account the idea of having a table for the 2 dates going forward in any future reports. With regard to the decision making, you're absolutely right. It will be for full council to make any decisions about the changes, because, you know, this is your scheme of delegation. And I think the work that we're doing just now is to inform you about what you might want to see in the future, and indeed if you wanted to make any changes. So, and that sort of leads on, the reason that you've not got the detail about all of these questions in 4.5 is that this committee's role and this report today is about the timetable and about how we're conducting the review. So the meat of the background to these questions is indeed in the area committee report, so that members have got that background, that sort of refreshing memories about what the issues that were raised last year. So there is more detail about each of the questions in there. With regard to the common good, the single common good subcommittee, yes, indeed, that was brought up in the workshop last year. But I think officers have indeed recognised that I think there was universal view that that wasn't something that members wanted to look at the moment. And so while there is an officer review group taking place just now, which is looking at a whole range of different aspects of common good, the funds, the property registers, etc., that the changes to the number of common good subcommittees is not currently a live issue. But there would obviously be a report to members about any proposed changes in relation to common goods that would come forward from that group. Thank you.
Thanks for that,
Thanks,
Liz.
Chair.
Any other members? Nope. Okay, with that, we'll move to recommendations, and we're being asked to note 2.1, the work to date on the review of area committees as referenced in paras 4.2 to 4.5 and detailed in appendices 1 and 2. And we've to agree 2.2, the timetable is set out in para 4.6 for the development and agreement of any changes to the current arrangements for area committees. And I think we've accepted that that will go to full council. I don't know that it needs to be explicit, does it? No, that's fine. Good. Thank you, members.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Liz. Okay, moving on to item 6, annual review of outside bodies update, report by Assistant Director, Governance and Human Resources. Claire, I think you're here to assist, or Tracy, now that she's back from Stranraer, great. So Tracy's here to assist members if they have any questions. Councillor McFarlane.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Firstly, thank you for the report, but I'd just like a little bit of clarity. On page 25, category 1's highlighted in yellow. And then as we work through the papers, there are certain things that are highlighted in yellow. So on page 27, the Joint Safety Committee, but page 28, I think it is, yep, some of the members are highlighted in yellow. So just a question of clarity around that firstly. And then secondly, I know that one of my colleagues has made an inquiry about the allocation of members to the IJB. And there's some suggestion that perhaps the legislation hasn't been complied with. So I'd like some clarity in relation to what the process is exactly for that. Thank you. Thanks
very much, Andy. Tracy.
Thanks, Chair. I'll pick up on the first point and then I'll maybe ask Vlad to come in on the second point. The ones highlighted in yellow, you're right, Councillor McFarlane, I should have used a different colour. Those were ones that I was currently looking at for reappointment due to the new structure changes. So they've been going to the service committee. So it was just for me to know that those were members that were either going to come off or need reappointed. But I should have used a different colour. So thank you for pointing that out.
And Vlad on the IJB point.
Yes, thank you. That's come as a formal request. Okay. The governance and legal are looking into, and we're just finalising an advice note that I think we'll give to all members on that front.
Thanks, Vlad. Andy, do you want to come back in?
Yeah, please. Thank you for that, and thanks, Tracy. In relation to the IJB again, as you might suspect, we've got a vacancy there, but we have substitutes, and I'm wondering why we haven't simply replaced the vacancy with one of the substitutes on a permanent basis, or is that still part of the same process? I don't know. Thank you.
I did ask that question myself recently, Andy, because I couldn't understand why a substitute couldn't become a substantive, but Vlad, have you any idea? Because we were informed, or Tracy?
Thanks, Chair. I did make contact with the group who had the vacancy, asking if they wanted to move their substitute member to a full member, and they advised not at the current time, so that's why it's remaining as a vacancy at the moment.
Thank you. Thumbs up, good. Councillor Campbell?
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks very much for the report. Yeah, I'm happy with the recommendations. Just again, a couple of points of clarity, if I may. I mean, in the appendix, it gives reference to all the committees that appoint outside bodies. So I take it that the likes of economy and infrastructure, for example, there's a list of outside bodies that they appoint from that committee, and then you've got full council. They appoint those, etc., etc. Just maybe clarify that for the moment, and then I'll probably come in with a question at that. Thanks, Chair.
Tracy?
Yes, that's correct. Each one appoints to the ones that fall under their list within the appendix.
Okay, well, that kind of brings me to the question that when I was looking at the full council one, there's a number of outside bodies, for example, the North Channel Partnership that sits under full council, yet economy and infrastructure had a report just last week, appointing people from the economy and infrastructure committee. So I'm wondering why was E&I appointing these when it should have been a full council one? That's one point. The second one is education, skills, community wellbeing. Again, it says here the Dumfriesshire Education Trust. This is on page 34 if members want to follow it. And it's the number of members appointed, which is 6. And we've got 3 names there and 3 vacancies. But then if you go to page 37, you've got under the Nithsdale Area Committee, we have 2 members there on the Dumfriesshire Educational Trust. So who's meant to fill this? Is it meant to be the 2 area committees that then goes to education? Because I'm looking at the names that's already in there. That would mean that Jim Dempster, Ivor Hislop and Paula Stevenson, that's 3 members from the Nithsdale Area Committee. Just a point of clarity on that, please, as well, if you could.
Thanks, John. Tracy?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Campbell. On page 29, I think it is, I'm looking at it online, the North Channel Partnership comes at the end of the list, which sits under economy and infrastructure rather than full council. So that's why it went to economy and infrastructure last week. It doesn't sit under full council on the appendix that I'm looking at. And the Dumfriesshire Educational Trust, it's 6 members that get appointed through Education Committee, and then there's an additional 2 that get appointed from each of the 2 area committees. So it's referenced under the Dumfriesshire Educational Trust under Education, and you'll see where it's just got in brackets that it's also 2 from Annandale and Eskdale and 2 from this Nithsdale Area Committee, but we're only asking Education to appoint 6. Which will be separate to those that are appointed through Area Committee, which is why when we go to Education sometimes the members who are already appointed through the Area Committee can't then put themselves forward to sit on it as part of Education. It has to be other members who don't already sit on it as part of Area Committee. Hope that makes sense.
Yeah, thanks very much, Tracy. It does make sense for the education one. However, the papers that I have, the list of outside bodies is a continuation from Dumfries and Galloway Council, and the last one on there was the North Channel Partnership, and the one above was community-led local development. That doesn't really sit under the papers I have, so maybe there was a misprint on that, because I can remember us appointing people to those from E&I last week, so my papers are different from what you're reading online. Yeah,
I do remember us appointing, you're right, at E&I. Tracy?
Thanks, Councillor Campbell. I'll certainly pick that up offline and I'll double check. But
Yeah.
yeah, it does sit under E9, so I'll make sure at our end it all ties up if it's not correct online. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chair. Yeah, I'm happy with the report. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Councillor Wood?
Thank you, Chair. It's actually a very worthwhile report, but what I would like is it possible to do an evaluation review of all of these outside bodies so that elected members fully understand which one, what all of these outside bodies contribute towards the council, or what we as a council contribute towards the outside body? Because there's about 35, 36 of these outside bodies that are listed today, and there's obviously cost implications with travel costs and various other costs. It would be good to get an evaluation of, put it into value terms, financial terms.
Thanks for that, Andrew. I think that's probably part of the review, although maybe not the financial terms, but Tracy?
Thanks. Yeah, we don't currently look at it financially. I know there is some work ongoing with the trusts about their financial elements, but we're just really looking at the review with the bullet points that are listed at 4.6 about how many times the body's met, how many times the members attended, and then looking at the benefits, and then for members to decide whether that body should remain on our scheme. We don't really factor in the financial element into the annual review process at the moment anyway.
Okay, thanks, Tracy. Andrew, do you want to come back in?
Yes, if you don't mind. It's just that I remember I used to sit on the industrial, I forget what it was called. It was to do with coal. And the gist of it was that all the monies that ever came to that organisation usually ended up going to other areas, especially down south. I think we managed to get some money for Kirkconnell quite a few years ago, but since then, to the best of my knowledge, nothing has come into the southwest of Scotland. So I do have concerns, and as I say, that was just one example.
Thanks, Andrew. Councillor Crothers?
Thanks very much, Chair. So just come back to Councillor Campbell's point. So when I was reading through this, I just made the assumption that, because I was looking at the A75 on page 28, A75, A77 Lobby and Action Group, so I just, because I know I was put onto that E&I committee too, so at the time of printing these would be factually correct, but there have been changes since then. No, so I'd assume correctly. Thanks very much for that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's very much the case. It's a bit of a moving feast, actually, isn't it? Good. Tracy?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. The link online, which is in your background papers, will take you direct to that appendix, which has been updated since the appointments of the committee, but obviously when we went to print, yeah, there was some changes.
Just a question from myself, when we're doing these reviews, do we feed back to some of the outside bodies? Because one thing, and I know that Councillor McFarlane will understand this as well, and Councillor Crothers, we have a lot of clashes with the IJB and main service committees, and that I do get concerned that when we've got really meaty business on IJB or the 3 subcommittees that it's got as well, that we're struggling with clashes with Council Diary, and it's maybe just an opportunity through the review to ensure that we're feeding back to these outside bodies that are really important and we need to sit on, that we try and coordinate and work better together to try and avoid the clashes, and then we might get better attendance at both. So it's just to sort of figure that into any future review. Vlad?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think that's an action that we can take in terms of just communicating with link officers and ensuring that they're passing that message on, and in essence giving them the link to both the IGB calendar as well as obviously the council, so that they can take cognizance of that when setting up their meetings, particularly if they're wanting members at it.
No, that's helpful. Thank you. Okay, so we'll take that as an action. No other members? So we'll move to the recommendations, and we're being asked to agree the proposed way forward and timeline as detailed in paras 4.5 to 4.7. We're happy to agree? Good. Moving on to item 7, annual review of standing orders, report by Assistant Director, Governance and Human Resources. Claire, are you assisting with this one this time? Yeah, good. Thank you. I can open up to members. Councillor Marshall.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I've got a number of points on this. Do you prefer me to give each point and then allow officers the chance to respond to each point separately? Because I've only got about 4 or 5 points, but
They can write.
She says she'll see how quickly she can write.
yeah. Okay, then I'll give it a go. So the first one is on page 51 at the bottom of the page, 8.6, where it states the chair may allow any member of the council, committee or subcommittee meeting to participate and vote. And this is for teleconference or Teams meetings. I'm just wondering, now that it's common practice, it's normal practice to have hybrid meetings, why we have may there instead of will. That's the first one.
Yeah, I mean, you can certainly put that forward as a recommended change if you felt that was, if the members felt that was appropriate.
Yeah, because I can't see any reason why you would not allow any member, you know, if they're on that committee and we now are having hybrid meetings. I think it would be better if that was will. The second one is on page 60, and it's the business agenda. 16.1, it states, responsible for the preparation of agendas and papers for a meeting rests with the appropriate proper officer, and reports will only be submitted to the council or committee after full consultation. What does that mean? You know, with who? And similarly, 16.2, it says such reports shall only be submitted after due consideration and appropriate consultation. Again, is there any way that we can elaborate on appropriate and full consultation within the standing orders?
Vlad, do you want to come in?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think it's a really good point. The position from I think officers would be on that is that it very much it has to be relatively flexible because the consultation will depend. So some reports, for example, it's absolutely crucial that we consult with the unions as an example, and therefore that will be different from other reports that don't require union input into that. We tend to do that as a matter of norm anyways, but that's just an example of where it's appropriate and it's not necessary to have all stakeholders on every single paper involved, because obviously we've got a very, very long list of stakeholders across the council. The important consultation piece is one that when officers are drafting reports, there will be ongoing consultations, and then thereafter there's a kind of more formal one, which then we're consulted, and we've got a kind of 2-week period or window for that to go to, for example, CMT, SLT, and any other stakeholders that it's appropriate under the circumstances. So it might be, for example, particular community groups and so on that we may wish to consult at an early stage. So it needs to be flexible. I think if we start putting parameters around that, it will make it overly bureaucratic and will create an industry of itself that's probably unnecessary.
Yeah, just to come back on that then so if it's probably, and I can understand, you know, different reasons why, you know, there's different stakeholders that would be required to be consulted on a report before it went to committee. But it's maybe helpful that although it's not incorporated within standing orders, maybe a guidance note be prepared for members about, you know, just examples of the various different situations that you've explained there, Vlad.
Through yourself, Chair. Absolutely, and actually it's pretty good timing as through the Business Bureau we have just asked members for their views on the template for the report, and on the back of that there's some guidance that we give to officers. So what we can do is we can include a paragraph along those points around the consultation piece. I think we already have some guidance around it, but I think maybe setting that out as usual, what we tend to say, if in doubt, come to us in governance, and then we'll provide some guidance for the author.
Yeah, thanks. And the next one is on page 62. It's 19 matters of special importance and urgency, and we've had a number of those recently. I take it this is referring to decisions that have to be taken out with a committee meeting and can lead to homologation of a decision. I'm just wondering 19.1 and 19.2, fully understand that, you know, whether it's full council, it goes to the convener and deputy convener. If it's to a committee, it's to the chair and the vice chair. I think, and I don't know if it can be incorporated in there, but I think there should be some sort of reference in there that there would be notification to group leaders. I think, you know, there's been a couple of decisions that we took over the summer, and it would be appropriate maybe to put something in standing orders that they would at least be notified. They wouldn't be involved in the actual decision making, but they would be involved in notification if these circumstances arose.
Thanks, Sean. I think that would be entirely sensible. As you'll know, I'm often asking Nick to cascade things to group leaders and sometimes all members as well. But if it was embedded within there as good practice, I think that would be a good idea, because, you know, we don't want to keep these things to ourselves. It's better to share. Is that okay?
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chair.
Vlad?
Yes, yeah, thank you for that suggestion. I think, can I maybe just ask that we'll go away and look at it, because there might be a way in as well through the member officer protocol that has specific notifications to members to ensure that where we've got these kind of urgent matters, the relevant people, and you'll recall that in the member officer protocol there's a notification process for those particular ward members. We can maybe look at either both or one or the other, depending on what's appropriate, and then come back to members on that.
Quite happy with that, Sean?
Yeah, I appreciate that, but I would prefer if it was incorporated in the standing orders, because that's how we conduct the business in the council. So, but I'm willing for Vlad to go away and look at that. And then on page 63, it's just because it mentions at the bottom that 5.4 was removed. It was really just a reminder what 5.4 was. I was looking for it, but and I wasn't. I'm just kind of new on to the this committee, so I don't know what 5.4 was. It was removed in 7th of March 23.
I think it was the co-leaders going from co-leaders to leader and deputy leader.
Right, yeah, that's fine, thanks.
That's my memory.
Yeah, and then my final point is really just, I've had a look through it, and forgive me if I've not seen it anywhere or missed it, but there's nothing in standing orders or the scheme of delegations that references the timing of issuing of relevant committee papers. This is something that's been discussed at a few meetings, and it's kind of like, I don't know where it's agreed that it's a week before service committees, etc. But I think over the last couple of years we've experienced that, you know, we get the bulk of the papers and then we get add-on follow papers, and we end up with maybe 3 or 4 sets of documents. And I know the constraints, because there's, especially for the people that are pulling together these reports, because they're waiting on various people getting these reports together. But there needs, I do think that if we want to run our business properly, there was a suggestion if it was possible 2 weeks to get the papers 2 weeks before, or the bulk of the papers 2 weeks before meetings. But you know, there is still obviously the concern as well that we're getting most of the papers through in the week, but then we're getting ones maybe 2 or 3 days before the meeting, which isn't great if you're on a number of committees and you've got a number of committees following on that. It's really just giving members the appropriate time to read properly all the papers. It's good business going forward for the council. So I know that somewhere it's being looked at, but I would have thought somewhere in standing orders or the scheme of delegation that there was some reference towards committee papers and the timings.
Thanks, Sean. Vlad?
Yes, thank you, Chair. In terms of the point around what is required, that's kind of set in statute, and you'll see it under Standing Order 610. Just for info, all those that are in kind of square brackets or in the kind of square table as such within standing orders are all coming from legislation. And you'll see that under 610 it makes it clear that it's 3 clear working days, and that's what's set in statute. Obviously, as officers, we have kind of internal protocols that we aim to get that as soon as possible, and certainly within that kind of 2 kind of working weeks as such to members, and we have recently looked at the stats on that, and the stats on that is that we have tended to publish on time for the bulk of our papers, but there will be ad hoc papers that would be copied to follow. Usually these will meet that statutory duty of 3 days. Where we are not meeting it is because it becomes an urgent paper, which again, that's got an exemption under the kind of statutory framework. So hopefully that kind of sets the various parameters, everything from the legislation to what we aim to do as officers, so that we can do the best that we can to get papers as quickly as we can to members, because we fully recognise that that there's a lot of reading involved. So I absolutely get that from Councillor Marshall.
Thanks, Vlad. You okay with that, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, I know that. I've just looked at that, and thanks for pointing me to that. I still think that 3, and I know the council has, endeavoured to actually improve on that, because we have some, and I don't know where it's written, but we have had this general rule that members would get the papers a week before. So we're actually overachieving on that, but it's just, there's nothing in there to, is there anything that you could put in standing orders? That's what we have to do by statute, but is there any good practice we could put in there that would confirm, what's happening at the moment?
I'll bring Vlad back in, but I mean, I think work like this has been going through Business Bureau and through the forward plan. You're absolutely right. We need to have a good practice of minimum of 7 days, preferably longer. And I think we're probably meeting most of that now anyway. But can we feed this through Business Bureau, or Vlad, would it need to go somewhere else?
Yeah, I think that that'd be appropriate to go through the Business Bureau, Chair. So I think that's a good point. And then thereafter, I think maybe we can, as officers from the governance team, maybe come round the political groups, if that would be helpful, to have some further discussion around these. Important that we benchmark that, and we have done a bit of benchmarking around it, and actually our timetable, it's rather more than any other standing order that we've seen out there in terms of the protocols, not the standing order, sorry, the protocols for publishing. We have already sense checked that, and certainly we're way beyond what other local authorities are doing in terms of that kind of 2-week period. So yeah, we're already doing that. It's important we don't set ourselves up to fail either in standing orders, and that's why the legislation's set at that kind of 3 days. But we obviously aim to do much better than that, and that's what we've got in our protocols.
Good, thank you. Are you okay with that, Sean?
Yeah, thanks for that clarification. That's been helpful.
Right, so we'll take that as an action. Business Bureau and round political groups. Good. Councillor Campbell?
Thanks very much, Chair. Yeah, I support what Councillor Marshall was wanting to do with the amendments in the report, and I'm quite happy for Standing Orders 19.1, 19.2 to be followed up by Vlad. I think that's quite appropriate. So I'm happy to support all that. I was looking at the 5.4. I've got a set of old standing orders here, and it was just basically to say that should the convener be unable to chair full council, it was just who would be the first substitute, etc., etc. So I'm quite pleased. I mean, that's common sense. Just take 5.4 out. So I'm quite happy with the amendments which is referenced on page 63 and 64. But there was one thing I was hoping to try and see if we can implement in standing orders under standing order 19 on page 62. And this is, sorry, not 19, I've got the wrong one. Apologies. Sorry, standing order 9, under 9.2, where it says any members who
I think you've frozen, John, if you can hear me. Wait for it. Yeah, absolutely, Councillor Crothers.
Thanks very much. So just, if that's okay, just till Councillor Campbell unfreezes and comes back, if we can hear that or not, I'm not sure. So just coming back a couple of, one point that Councillor Marshall picked up, I thought it was 8.6, page 51, and it's the chair may, and he picked up the word may in particular. I wonder why that was what was put there in the first place. And maybe come back to that. I can remember discussing it heavily about 12 years ago. It was Mr Haswell at the time. He was insistent that word needed to be there for various reasons, but I just wondered if we could have reflected on that. I'm not saying I agree with it. 16.2 on page 60. Any member may request the proper officer to arrange for a report on a policy issue. It's that word policy. Why is it policy? Why is it? There could be other reasons that are of material importance to be asking for a report rather than policy. I just wondered if we could have reflected on that as well. So that was at 16.2. Any member may request the proper officer to arrange a report on a policy. So maybe why policy, why not other issues potentially? I think that was probably my main points. There was others, but that's probably the main points. Mostly everybody else has picked up on other stuff. And if can't get to the bottom of them today, happy to get them to the bottom at a different time if that's necessary. Thank you very much, Chair. I don't know if Councillor Campbell's back or not.
Claire, do you want to pick up on that?
Okay. My understanding of 8.6 is that would have been added at the time when the arrangements got put in place around the time of the COVID pandemic, and perhaps we've moved on a bit since then.
Yeah, absolutely that.
Through yourself, Chair. Yeah, I think mostly times have changed, and I think that's recognised in terms of now our arrangements. The only thing I can think of that we may wish, and that's probably the wrong word to use, but that we may wish to maintain that is simply where we may have technical issues. So let's say, for example, that we were to have technical issues in regards to full council, in which maybe the large number are present in a physical presence, but for some reason we can't get the live stream or the internet working. Then, in essence, in that scenario, if it is, that we've accepted them as in, then they won't be participating in the meeting. So that's the only. I'm just thinking, what could be the potential caveat to that, which is where there is that kind of technical difficulty. And I have heard through colleagues in other local authorities where that has happened, and therefore the meeting has had to carry on with those present in a physical sense.
Pardon. Second point around 16.2, arrange for a report on a policy issue. And
yeah, I think that's something we can take again via that business bureau process, and again discuss the political groups thereafter.
Good, thank you.
Thanks very much, Chair. I think I was maybe getting mixed up in regards to that, what Sean was talking about. I think he's absolutely right. I think I was thinking back to when you may not be a member of a committee, and the chair may allow somebody to come and speak at it. That's what I think I was getting mixed up. Thank you.
Councillor Campbell, you're back in the room.
Thanks, Chair. Apologies for that. I just caught the tail end of what you were talking about, internet connections, and I think mine just went down. I don't know how much you actually heard of what I was actually saying before I got disconnected. I'm now on my iPhone because my iPad and everything else is not connecting to the internet. So it's probably a mobile signal that I'm using at the moment. So did you hear much, Chair?
I think Claire's got a bit of a note down, but how far did we get with Councillor?
16.2.
16.2 was where we got to.
Right, okay.
9.2, sorry.
Sorry, 9.2. Yeah. So did I get as far as order of business? Yes,
Yeah.
I did. Yeah, I was talking about the you know, when we start the business and we make declarations of interest, but we also ask members about statement of connections. Now, there's nothing in standing orders that says that, so technically we don't have to make a statement of connections unless it falls under something else. And I'm sure Vlad already gave us a briefing on where that came from, but I'm just wondering under 9.2 that we should have, or even have a 9.3 saying about statement of connections as well, added to standing orders, so we're absolutely clear. That was the point I was trying to make.
Vlad?
Yes, thank you, Chair. And I absolutely understand the kind of, and dare I say it, the kind of custom and practice that we've had here in terms of that statement of connection. But what I would suggest is, and hopefully the briefing that has gone to members on that, is that that's for members to decide whether they wish to declare it. There's absolutely no requirement to declare a statement of connection in the way that you would have to declare that interest, which is different, and that's in the Code of Conduct. So that there is that difference. The one you absolutely must, and the other one is really for members if they wish to do so. And you know, we get a lot of declarations of connection in terms of outside bodies and so on, and the Code of Conduct is very clear that you don't need to state that, because that's already been through that transparency of decision making, and you've been appointed to those bodies through the council, so there's absolutely no requirement to have those statements of connections.
So really it comes down
Thanks.
to good practice again, yeah. Sorry, John?
No, I was just going to say, Chair, that no, thanks for the clarity on that, Vlad. But you know, sometimes standing orders are there as a guidance that we should follow, and if we're going to follow best practice on statement of connection, maybe it should or could be incorporated. But I'm happy either way. I won't be too fussed whether it gets added or not. I just thought I'd raise the point.
No, that's great, John, thank you. Councillor Marshall?
Yeah, it's just on that point. I think John makes a good point, and you know, Vlad has explained that. But because you know it's kind of like best practice, and it's allowing us to do that, these are our standing orders. So I don't think there would be any harm in actually putting in that we do allow for a statement of connection in standing orders, as well as the guidance note that's been sent out.
Would you be comfortable if we take that through Business Bureau and the groups as well? Because we've got 2 or 3 issues now to discuss with the groups, and I think that would be sensible, and then we can incorporate it where appropriate, Sean?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, good. Any other members? No, good, okay, thank you for that. So members, moving to recommendations, we're being asked to note 2.1, the administrative amendments made to the standing orders, the scheme of administration and delegation to committees, and the scheme of delegation and responsibilities to officers and statutory appointments over the last year as detailed in appendices 1, 2 and 3. And we're to recommend 2.2, the standing orders appendix 1 for the consideration of full council to determine whether any alterations should be considered. And we've also got a few actions to take away and some work to do through the Business Bureau and through political groups, if that's okay. So are we happy to note and recommend? Councillor Marshall, sorry.
Yeah, it was just for clarity. Obviously, I think it's December when it's going to full council. So I'm just wanting clarification that, the actions that we've done through the Business Bureau, the things we've got to progress through the Business Bureau and the political groups, those, depending on the feedback from that, those will be included in the final paper. It goes to full council for the annual review.
Thanks, Sean. I'm not sure that we've specified December for this report to go, but I'll turn to Vlad.
Yes, thank you, Chair. No, and I think that's a valid point. Again, in terms of clarification, we haven't, and that's purposely not put a date on it because it's important that we take members' views on this, and it's important that we're able to go away, work on that through the Business Bureau, through the political groups, and therefore I think it'd be unrealistic to take this to the December full council because we need to get this right. It is the standing orders are the rules of play as such for members, so we need to make sure that they're correct and that we're in a position to get those approved. I think colleague Nick wants to maybe come in on that as well.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just for reference, the Business Bureau doesn't meet again until the 10th of December, which is just 2 days before council, so it wouldn't be, so it certainly wouldn't appear in any report going to council at that point.
That's fine, thanks, Nick. Councillor Carruthers.
Thanks so much, Chair. Before Sean came in, I was going to ask, once you went through the recommendations, could this committee have seen the draft minute? And then at that point, rather than go through all the actions now, try and elaborate that or get that doing. I mean, we wouldn't want to go through that, but if we see the draft minute, I would imagine the draft minute will outline all the different actions that are in there. We should see that within there, and then at that point we can see exactly. Because then I'm not, for by in broad terms, recommend the standing orders appendix 1 as you've outlined 2.2, but any alterations should be considered, any alterations that we've spoken about today, I'm not exactly clear on what the decision is, but we've seen the draft minute, would be able to understand and feed into that if that's possible.
The draft minute probably wouldn't include the actions. That'll be through the action tracker, but Vlad?
Yes, Chair, that's correct. But members will now have access to that action tracker. So we've now worked on an action tracker, and you'll be able to, I think, hopefully from next week, members will have access to the new revamped action tracker, which hopefully will be more accessible, and you'll be able to pinpoint exactly which committee you wish to look at the actions, and you'll be able to see these actions within that.
Yeah, and just on that point, I've already spoken with Nick about ensuring that all elected members know how to access it, because I thought it had gone live, couldn't find it, and completely confused myself through Connect and iTrent and various other areas. So we'll need a very clear email out to members just to let them know exactly how to use it and where it is. Nick?
Yes, thanks, Chair. It will be fairly straightforward. Members will get an email, much like they do currently for the forward plan, and it will contain a link to the action tracker in there, and it's simply clicking on the link and it will take you in. You'll be able to filter by committee, by date, by officer. There's a number of options you've got there for you. It will show you current actions, completed actions, actions due by month, by committee, etc., etc. So it is pretty comprehensive.
Ian?
So what's the process? Sorry if I can exhaust this, but so in a minute, we get that back to us, we see that minute, and we say it's in draft format, and we agree it, or we change it, we vary that minute, and it's agreed, and that's the finalised minute. So when it comes to the action tracker, so go in, that's absolutely fantastic. Go online, there's the ROSA committee, there's the action tracker, 14th of November, 2 o'clock, fantastic, there's all the actions. Oh, that's not what we said, so to speak. So I'm just wondering if a member comes up with that, goes through that process, comes to that conclusion, what do they do?
I think the process is, Chair, that and you'll probably go through, you may be going through this in literally a few minutes, but the process will generally be at the end of meetings that the governance officer and lead officer go through the agreed actions with the chair and agree those hopefully before leaving the meeting, and then it's taken forward and input into the tracker, etc., etc., and it goes forward in that way.
think it will be a really good process once it's bedded in, and the key thing is taking those actions immediately after the meeting while they're still live in your mind, and then ensuring that people like myself check our action tracker and make sure things are on track, and if they're not, raise it with the appropriate people. So I think once it beds in, it will be really useful, but the key with it was to ensure that all elected members had access to it as well, because they will have specific interests in certain things and want to ensure that they are on target and progressing. Whereas the chair and vice chair have a responsibility to absolutely ensure that, but all members should have that information. Ian?
Just a small point. I suppose the point I was trying to raise more than anything. So take examples, Standing Order 16.2, and I've asked the question specifically why the word policy, can that be looked at? So you'll have your interpretation in regards to that, which is absolutely right. I'll have my interpretation. They might be absolutely aligned, they might be slightly different, and that's the point of variance. So it's whether it's me on that one or whether it's Sean on whatever, or John Campbell on his, it's okay. We're quite clear with it. Everybody thinks they know what they've agreed, but I've seen it many times in minutes. It's what is the process? I would imagine I'll look at it, if I'm not sure, I'll go straight back to Nick or Tracy or Fraser, whoever it may be, or Vlad, say, listen, I thought this was different. So certainly it's there to be tested to start off with, and if it needs amended, we could do that there afterwards. So no, I'm more than happy with that. Thanks, Chair.
Good. Okay. So I've not been notified of any other urgent business. So with that, thank you very much all for your participation, and enjoy the rest of your foggy day.
Lovely sunny
Thanks,
day,
everyone.
everybody.